Hi, my name's Martin Thompson from the ITAM Review, and thank you for joining me for this video. I'm going to give an overview of our recent 2019 Salary and Skills Survey. And thank you to our friends at Livingston who have kindly sponsored this research. So my agenda for this video is to give you an overview of the skills and salaries in the market. So we're going to look at what skills are in demand and where salaries are going. We will talk about money quite a bit in this session, and whilst money isn't everything for an ITAM career, it certainly points to where the skills and the roles are in demand, so it gives us some good pointers about where the opportunities are for career growth. I'm going to highlight where careers are going and the opportunities for IT asset management careers and professionals around the world. And we're also going to look at team size and credibility. So the size of team and the number of resources on your team is often a common point of interest, and we're going to link that for the first time with our research in terms of the standing and the credibility of your practice, and look at sort of average team sizes. And finally, on this video, I'm going to give you an indication of the ITAM Views direction, so where are we taking our business, our community, and in response to some of these trends. So just a quick overview of the research itself before we dig into the detail. So this was based on 265 professionals from 27 countries, and we conducted the research from March to May in 2019. And if you were on the ITAM View newsletter, you would have seen invites to this research, and thank you to everyone that participated to help us put this data together. It was a cross-industry piece of research, so 60% was end users, but we also had consulting firms, partners, resellers, tool manufacturers, and so on into the mix. On the left-hand side, you can see the gender mix, so roughly 69% of the workforce that we polled was male, and 31.5% was female, which is broadly the same as other IT disciplines, and you can also see that roughly 95% of you are in full-time positions. So the size of the market for consultants, part-time staff, short-term and long-term contractors is mostly sub 1% in most cases. So I've broken the results into three sections. I'm going to look at the skills shortage and salary growth. We reported a skill shortage back in 2014, dire need of new blood into this industry, and we'll cover that first. I'll then go on to current expertise and team size and credibility. So first of all, let's look at the skills. So this first chart shows average income by age and gender. So on the left-hand side, we have salaries in UK sterling. So what we've done is we've taken the salaries from 265 different individuals from 27 countries, and we've normalised that into UK sterling. And then we've allocated that by age bracket and by gender. So on the bottom horizontal axis, you can see 25 to 34, 35 to 44, and so on. So first thing to observe here is that you've got salary growth throughout your, as you get older throughout the discipline. Other notable thing is the 18 to 24 bracket is, as we've reported in previous salary surveys, is very, very small. We had next to no data for that bracket. We are in desperate need of bringing more blood and more new recruits into the industry in that bracket. But what I wanted to report here really is the gender gap. So 25 on the right hand side, you can see this table. So this represents the differential between male and female salaries for each age range. So it's only 4% between 25 and 34, and it grows to 35, 30 and 35 respectively for later age brackets. Now you could argue some of that differential is based on experience, and if female ITAM professionals are taking time out to have families, for example, which they might do traditionally, then that would lessen their experience and therefore they would be on lesser salaries, you could argue. I would also like to think, rather maybe optimistically, that maybe this is a generational gender gap, that the differential between 25 and 34 will filter throughout the other age brackets as we move forward. But regardless of whatever your position on this, there is a gender gap and it's quite significant. The next chart I'd like to show you is how long has it taken your organisation to fill any unfilled open positions. So you can see the first three categories here are less than 3 months, 3 to 6 months and more than 6 months. And the general trend here is it's taking longer for you to fill those positions. So look at the jump up on more than 6 months. It's taken you considerably longer in 2019 to fill those positions than in 2017 and 2014. And the other observation here is that we have the final bracket on the right hand side, final allocation is we have not got any open positions, so we're not hiring, and that is descending between 2014 and 2019. So the summary here is that it's taking longer to fill positions and more of you are hiring. For those of you that are hiring, we looked at what skills you're looking to bring in the next 12 months and what's most in demand. This is pretty much unchanged since 2014 and 2017. So SAM and software licensing folks are most in demand, and I very much view this similar to nursing or teaching. It's a very transferable skill around the world, SAM and software licensing. Languages aside, a Microsoft contract is a Microsoft contract regardless of where you are on the planet, and if you've got the skills to manage that and you have the appropriate languages, you can do that pretty much anywhere on the planet. We've separated these out by country just by the two largest one, which is UK and USA, and rest of world, and you can see that with the odd exception, they are broadly the same demands for skills across the world, and the gold line, the yellowy gold line, is the average across all countries. The UK average salary, I've just reported this for the UK conference, so we were reporting the UK salary specifically, was 62,000. That places the UK 5th out of the top 7 countries. But if you actually look at the numbers, Australia's 65. Again, this is normalised, so we took Australian dollars and converted it all to pounds for this comparison. So there's going to be discrepancies in currency here and fluctuations, but broadly you could argue that most of Europe and the sort of G8 countries are on a 62-ish, 6 to 65 bracket, which broadly the same, and the USA is significantly higher at 83. I think for IT careers generally, you find that the USA has higher salaries, but we're told it has fewer benefits, so less holiday and so on. That balances things out depending on your point of view. Again, looking at so that was the UK specific salary. If we look at the global view, so in 2014 we reported that the global salary average was 54,000 UK sterling. So that's from the youngest, most inexperienced administrator right through to the most senior asset manager or ITAM role, ITAM director. So this is the aggregated average across all of those roles across all countries. In 2017, we reported that over that 3-year period, 2014 to 2017, that grew over 13% to 62,000. So quite a jump in that period. And for 2019, I can report that the global average across 265 different professionals for 27 countries grew 15% in just 2 years to 71,000. Now, if you consider that the global inflation rate, so you would expect, some salary growth, but if you look at the global inflation rate of 3.5%, so Global inflation is at 3.5%, and that includes countries like China, Brazil, India, Russia with significantly higher inflation rates. So the global average is 3.5, and we grew as a profession at 15% over 2 years. That's a significant jump. So what this is telling us, I believe, is not only is the skill shortage still with us, it's gotten much worse. It's taking longer to hire people, more of you are looking, and salaries are on the up. Now, from a selfish point of view, that's awesome. But if you're a SAM professional, your salary's gone up 15% average over 2 years, but it doesn't bode well if you're looking to grow a team. And a lot of you are, your next career step, you're telling us, is that you want to do the same sort of role, maybe for the same company, but I want to manage a team. And if we don't have that blood coming in, we're not going to be able to grow those teams, and you're not going to be grow your career. So that's a quick overview of skills and salary growth. Now, if we move on to current expertise, so what are your current expertise levels like? So this is a chart I prepared for our US conference back in Florida in March, and so this specifically looks at US salaries. And what you can do for the US ITAM market is you can broadly group ITAM pros into 3 buckets. So there's an equal number of people that are earning less than 100k, then there's another equal amount that are earning between 100 and 150, and there's another equal amount of people in the US that are earning over $150,000. So we've sort of taken their salaries and we've grouped them into those 3 buckets. And then what we've asked them to do is self-score their expertise across 4 groups: mobile, cloud, data center, and desktop. So if you look at the left-hand side first, if you look at the 100k, people earning less than 100k, you can see that they've self-rated their skills at 7.5 out of 10. That's typically where people start: desktop SAM, desktop ITAM. Then data center is only 5.25, cloud is 3.75 out of 10, which is quite low, and mobile is at 4.6. Then look at the difference when you move to 100k to 150. What's the difference in their skills earning that much more money? Desktop skills are broadly the same, they've gone to 7.9, but look at the jump in data center and cloud, especially cloud. Data center's up 2 points and cloud has doubled. So the message here, folks, is and again, just to emphasize, it's not all about the money, but what money allows us to do is point at the skills that are in demand. Where are your future career opportunities? Where's the market going? Where are future opportunities likely to ask, or what are they likely to be asking of you? So what this is telling us is data center, which is typically more complex, involves significantly more spend, is going to increase your earning potential and increase your your career prospects in the future. And cloud is significant as well. So the message here is get your arms around cloud. How does that work? How can I manage costs and risks in the cloud for my company? And obviously data center and cloud these days are inextricably linked because they're typically blended one with the other. So it's a great area to focus on in the future. We also dug down into some other specific ITAM skills. So again, this is 260 odd different ITAM professionals around the world, and we asked them to self-rate their skills between 1 and 10 around the following areas. And the first thing to observe is that a lot of these are quite close together. So the top is 8 and the bottom is 6.7. So it's quite a close range. And the top 3 here were reporting and analysis, working with stakeholders, and licensing expertise. So reporting and analysis, was very high. A score of 8 out of 10 average across 260 different professionals. That's very high. And the lowest 3 were audit defense, tool administration, and project management. I'm not surprised at audit defense being low. Even if you speak to the most experienced ITAM professionals, they don't necessarily have lots of audit defense experience. You just have to have 2 or 3 under your belt to be to have good experience there. So I'd welcome opportunities or ideas about how we could share more information about audit defence with our ITAM review community. Tool administration, so the administration and productivity of SAM tools and ITAM tools was very low compared to other skills. I'm not surprised at that either. People typically don't have any problem getting it installed and working, but they lack the expertise sometimes to actually drive the original value that they signed up for. That's typically a challenge. And project management was lowest at 6.77. Now, we discussed this at the UK conference yesterday, and one of the points that was made is that we're typically out of the loop in terms of project management in ITAM. The pace and the process of delivering projects internally. So maybe that's why it's so low. But that was pointed as one of the lowest skill points. So that was your current skills. If we then move on to your wish list, so what are you looking to add to your ITAM utility belt over the next 12 months? So we asked the question, which areas of expertise do you wish to add to your skill set in the next 12 months? By far the most significant response from all of you was cloud. I've called it cloud administration or cloud management. So it was, how does licensing work in the cloud? How do I administer cloud portals? How do I do cost management in the cloud? How do I set up the appropriate guardrails for change management and request to stop cloud getting out of control, and so on? Just administering ITAM within cloud environments. And that was over 25%. The second most common response was the big four licensing groups, so Microsoft, SAP, IBM, and Oracle, perennial favourites in terms of licensing complexity. ITAM and SAM best practice was at number 3. And general, I want to learn more about different licensing groups, licensing expertise and entitlement expertise was at number 4. So those top 4, cloud administration, big 4 vendors, best practice and additional license expertise represented over 55% of your responses in terms of what you're looking to add to your skill set in the next 12 months. So finally, I'd like to look at team size and credibility. And why are we looking at credibility? Because it's very rare to meet an ITAM team that isn't struggling to get more resource to address their challenges. And a lot of getting senior management buy-in to get more resource is based on the standing, the reputation, and the credibility of your ITAM team. So we've linked some data here to provide some pointers, and hopefully you find that useful. So what I've done first of all is I've done a simple plot of all of the responses. So on the bottom axis we have the estate size in thousands, so it goes from 0 to 140,000 assets being managed. And on the left hand axis we have the team size, it goes from 0 to 30. For the purpose of this chart, I've actually excluded some outliers. So there was some US organisations with up to 250,000 assets, but I've just focused on this range just for illustration purposes. So this is a simple plot. So if you can see there's an outlier on the left here that's quite high. So we have under 20,000 assets. There's somebody with like 12.5 people managing 20,000, which seems quite high compared to the rest of the charts. So this is a general guide. Perhaps what is more useful is if we apply a trend line to that. So we can then see where's the average trend. So you could say, for example, people with 80,000 assets being managed, the average, according to all of your responses, is around 5 staff. And when you get to 120,000, it's up to maybe 7 or 8. Perhaps what's even more useful, if we take that raw data and drop that into buckets, so we can say all the organisations that responded that have between 500 and 5,000 assets managed, the average is 2.2 in their team across all of those responses. And for the 50,000 assets to 100,000 assets, the average is 6.93. And I would also almost suggest that these are minimums that you would have in your team. So if you're looking to compare your team compared to your peers, I would consider these minimums. And I mean, I think over time people have said these are very useful when they're looking to build out their team and provide their boss or their senior management team some more evidence that their team is significantly smaller than the rest of the industry. But I think the real way of developing a team and building a team is to take a service-led approach, whereby you almost treat it like a startup within your company, like a business, and you say, right, what is the service that I'm going to deliver back to my business, and how am I going to resource that service? What's the SLA that I'm going to give back to the business for ITAM? ITAM is a service that I'm delivering as a function back to my business. How am I going to resource that service? And then if the business wants more and wants a more elaborate service, then they have to pay more for a more elaborate service. But anyway, this is a general guide. I would consider minimums. And then what we've also done is, and forgive me, this chart needs a bit of explaining. We've compared assets per team member versus reputation of your ITAM practice. So what we've done is I've showed you on previous slides that we have the number of assets per organisation and the team size per organisation. So what we've done is created the assets managed per team member. So on the left-hand axis here, we have the number of assets being managed in your environment divided by the size of your team. And on the bottom horizontal axis, we have the standing or reputation of your ITAM practice. So on the left-hand side, if it's a 1, which was the lowest score, that means the ITAM function is not known, or it's got a very weak standing. And if it's a 10 score, which is the highest, it means your senior management team is incredibly engaged with what you're doing. You've got a very strong reputation, and you've got an awesome, world-leading ITAM function. So you can see here from the results that on the left-hand side, those companies with a score of 1, which is the worst reputation ever, the average number of assets being managed per team member in their ITAM team is 30,000. So it's very high, basically. It's under-resourced. No wonder they have such a poor reputation. And then as you see the score grow from 2 to 4 to 6, you can see that curve drop considerably down to around the 5 to 10,000 bracket. But what happens is that it doesn't continue to drop. It flattens out to around the 5 to 10,000 mark. And if you look at the averages, those of the reputation score between 1 and 5, so a weak to middle reputation, have an average of 14,000 assets managed per team member. By the time you get to 6 to 10, so you're beginning to lead the industry with a very strong practice, it drops to 8.3. So I think the message here is that I think this is sort of leaning us towards some industry averages. So if I was to be forced to provide a rule of thumb, I would say that maybe, and this would depend entirely on your industry and your circumstances and what's going on. But you might argue that if you've got an estate of 5,000 assets, you probably need a minimum of 2 people. And then for each additional 5 to 10,000 people or assets in your estate, you probably need another asset manager or another person in your team. That would be a very broad rule of thumb, which is obviously going to differ wildly depending on your organisation. And then obviously there's going to be economies of scale to that. So when you've got hundreds of thousands of assets, you won't necessarily need a person per every 10,000. But that would suggest a general rule that you need resource to do this. But then, after a while, it tails off and the impact is less. I wanted to point to another trend as well that we've picked up last year, and this goes back to our reader survey we did back in October 2018. And this is very relevant when it comes to skills and salaries and the growth of the ITAM profession generally. So you might have seen this from us before. This is that ITAM is growing in seniority and influence. So we asked the question in 2011, so 7 or 8 years ago, where does your ITAM function report into? Where is it? Where's the dotted line? Where is your entire function reporting into? In 2011, that was service management was the lead answer at 45%. That was very common at the time. and is still to a degree now. We asked the same question in 2018. Obviously, this goes back to last year, and suddenly CXO direct report is the largest proportion with 37%. So that is 37% of you have the ITAM function reports directly into either the CIO, CTO, or typically, or the board basically, or the C-suite, which is a significant change in the industry, I think. So from 2011 to 2018, it's gone from 17% up to 37%. So this has impacts on our careers and on our skills that we need, and the credibility of our ITAM team, because we are increasingly under more scrutiny as a function. For nearly 40% of you, you're going to have scrutiny from a board level about your activity and your output. And I think the reason for this growing seniority and exposure of the function is twofold. One is that IT is becoming more and more important for every organisation. Despite the buzzwords and the hype, I think digital transformation is very much happening, and many of your businesses are being transformed and digitized throughout, from front to back. And IT is no longer a scientific techie department in the corner. It's now underpinning your entire business, and it's become very significant. So that's one reason. And the second reason is, I think, that the buyers of IT are not just in the IT department. So marketing is now a buyer of IT assets. Finance is now a buyer of IT assets, and those assets need managing and need cost management, risk management, and so on. So I think that's another reason why our ITAM function is blossoming beyond the IT department to be a company-wide role. So what does that mean for skills and salaries and the exposure of our departments? Well, I think it means that we need to step it up in terms of proving the value of ITAM and proving the credibility of our results. And I would like to think the ISO standard has a role to play in that process. So I'm a volunteer on WG21, Working Group 21, which is a voluntary group that puts the ISO standards together. And I'm very keen to promote the use of the ISO standard to help the industry. And I think for the first time in my career, I've been speaking to organisations, end user organisations, that say, I want to certify my organisation against the standard. It's become a business requirement, and there's a business value of doing so. So I'd just like to cover that quickly. So I think it's time for the ISO certification. The industry is at a stage whereby I think there's a significant benefit of looking at it. If we look at the common business benefits of doing ITAM, it's compliance. So we've been heavily driven by audit threat. The external publisher audits, for example. There's industry regulation for software and hardware, data, and compliance has been a huge driver for us. Arguably, I think that software audits are very much there, but depending on the vendor, they've sort of taken their foot off the pedal in terms of the aggressiveness. It's very much become reviews and how can I sell you cloud, basically. So the industry norm, especially if you're a vendor that's got cloud offerings, is there's a good cop, bad cop situation going on. So it's a threat of review of your estate, and the good cop is we'll sell you cloud to make that issue go away. So I think the audits haven't gone away, but I think the driver for that is sort of loosening a little bit whilst people are pushing you towards the cloud. Agility has always been there as well. It's a basic. The more you can't manage what you don't know. The more I know about my estate, the quicker I can move, the more agile I can be. That's always been a driver. And you've got the old efficiency argument as well, which is by knowing what you have and what you're using, you can save money by cutting out waste and negotiating harder. Those have been our staples of business benefits for the last couple of decades. I would argue that security has become a real strong fourth pillar of ITAM in the last couple of years. typically I would have argued that security was perhaps in the compliance bucket previously, but I think it warrants its own Venn circle here on the right hand side in terms of business advantages of ITAM. If you look at the significance of cybersecurity as a threat to people's organisations and the role that ITAM can provide, I think security is becoming an increasing benefit of ITAM. The organisation NIST, which is a North American standards body for US government, I believe, have brought out a paper, I think that was late last year in 2018, and they've said to organisations, if you're doing cybersecurity in your organisation, then ITAM is foundational. You need to know the integrity of your assets. You need to know the integrity of the software on those assets, and you need good data to make sure you're making the right decisions around security. We've been arguing that for a couple of decades in the ITAM space, but I think it's really coming to the fore. And it's, security is relevant whether it's desktop, data center, cloud, mobile, or IoT. As we go into the 2020s, these four arguments still hold true. So what does ISO certification add above and beyond these 4 bullet points? Well, 2 main benefits for me of for organisations looking at ISO certification, and that's for their organisation, is internal validation and external validation. So internal validation is things like internal audit, or your security team, or your financial teams, or whoever your stakeholders are that you're providing data to. You're basically saying, we're managing assets so effectively, and we're doing such a good job, and the quality of our service is so good that we've actually got it verified to an ISO standard level. So it's saying, for example, to your security team that might be doing 27,000, we're providing you data here that meets a very high level, reach an ISO level. So it adds, given all of this increased scrutiny that we're getting potentially at board level, it adds another layer of credibility to our data and to the services we're providing. And then you also have external validation. So you can go to your customers and your supply chain and your external stakeholders and even your business, your suppliers and your software publishers and providers, and say, we treat the management of assets so seriously, and we're doing it so well that we've actually got we're managing things at an ISO level. So an ISO level means we're not doing it the way that Microsoft says, or the way that IBM says, or the way that certain manufacturers say, which might be self-serving. We're doing it at an ISO level. So it's taking the quality of your data to another level. So when it comes to negotiation, for example, and you've got audit clauses and all these sorts of things, you're going to be a lot cheaper customer for the software publisher to manage if you're managing assets at this level. They're not going to have to go through the costly exercise of auditing you, and there's a possibility that you'll be able to negotiate that away, because rather than thumping the table and negotiating through bravado, you'd be able to actually say, look, there's quality here, we're taking this seriously. If we buy your software, we're going to manage it properly, so let's have a grown-up and positive conversation about it. So I think this is a real opportunity for our profession to step up your skills and to step up your careers and take the industry to the next level. And I think it's the natural evolution of our industry. Final point on this before I move on, I also think this represents competitive advantage for partners and service providers. So those partners that are providing SAM managed services, and I'll mention Livingston here because they very kindly sponsored this research, is I think this is an opportunity for partners to deliver SAM services and ITAM services to the ISO certification. So they can say, look, Mr. Customer, I'm going to look after your assets for you on your behalf, and I'm going to deliver that at an ISO level. So I think that represents competitive advantage. It sorts the wheat from the chaff in the market, and it shows the partners that are really taking things seriously and deliver really good quality services. So no such certification process exists, but please stay tuned to the ITAM review, because I'm very keen to push this forward, and we're putting the ISO group as a worldwide voluntary group is putting the steps in place to make sure this happens. So please stay tuned. We'll be looking for guinea pigs or pilot companies that are looking to get themselves certified to help with that. And just imagine the prize. If you're running an ITAM function, the prize is here I was the first organisation to get certified against the ISO standard. That's up for grabs at the moment. So finally, I just wanted to share some things we're up to from the ITAM review perspective in response to some of these trends. So our mission, our sort of day-to-day mission at the ITAM review has always been to provide resources and an independent resource for ITAM, SAM and licensing professionals. And we've been doing that for over a decade now, and we love doing that, and that's what we do. But our long-term vision for the industry is to make ITAM as prevalent and ubiquitous as finance or marketing or accounting, for it to be a de facto standard that everyone does. And it's certainly not that at the moment. You know, if you looked at the FTSE 100 and looked at how many of the, FTSE 100, for those outside the UK, is the 100 most valuable publicly listed companies in the UK. So it's same as a Fortune 50 or the NASDAQ or whatever. And those are publicly listed large companies, and I would bet that 100% of those are not doing ITAM. And if the future, we want to see a future whereby every company is doing this as a de facto function, that everyone is treating assets and managing them properly. So in order to get there, in order to build the industry in that way, we want to focus on three things. That's wisdom. So we've just had our UK conference yesterday, and that was a great opportunity for people to share their wisdom from the industry, which is their knowledge and their experience. So we're proud of our community, and we love doing it, and we want to continue offering, building our community for the ITAM review. We want to facilitate more knowledge sharing. We already have an active forum. I think even as of last month, May 2019, there was 9,000 odd people on our forum, and we want to continue to build that and continue opportunities for knowledge sharing. And we want to do more networking, more structured networking. So by subjects or by geography, we want to help people connect and get together. We also want to focus on outcomes, so business outcomes. We don't want people, we don't want the FTSE 100 to set up ITAM just for the sake of it. We want them to benefit from that and to get some business outcomes. So we want to continually share best practice. We want to share case studies and continue our excellence awards and shine a light on the best in the industry. And we also want to look at ways of increasing the credibility of the ITAM function. Now, ISO is just one way of increasing that credibility, but there's other ways, and we're keen to focus on that. And finally, we want to grow the pie. So we want to increase the number of organisations actually interested in ITAM. So historically, the ITAM review has done a lot around how to do ITAM, sharing your experiences or how to. We also want to do some stuff around why do ITAM in the first place. So almost to draw more people in. So that's more organisations that are interested in implementing ITAM, also more newcomers that want to join the profession and help other organisations. We also want to help with more structured career paths. So the industry de facto is to build, to maybe take some certification so that you can put an acronym on your CV and get that job. But then there's not really much structure beyond that, apart from experience or maybe licensing courses perhaps, or maybe very tactical courses here and there. Whereas if you look at the ITSM, ITIL space, for example, which is a bit more mature, you can join at a foundation level. You can then take different paths depending on your career, and it's a mixture of certifications and courses and experience and recognizing that experience from an independent perspective. So we want to add a lot more structure and opportunities for people to explore. So that's our sort of long-term direction and the vision that we have for the ITAM profession. I just wanted to share a few bits and pieces we're doing in terms of the near term. So in terms of ITAM best practice, we want to move towards 3 offerings. So we currently have this middle one at the moment, which is Practical ITAM or PITAM as a certification. We also want to add a foundational course to that, so that's maybe a why ITAM. So maybe that's something that you introduce to your stakeholders or senior management team. Maybe they don't need to know about all the in the weeds about how to do ITAM. They just want a very quick, high level understanding of why they should be doing it in the first place and the risks and the benefits involved. And we also want to do a more advanced course. So let's, if the primer or the foundation course is why, the PITAM course is how, the ITAM advanced is how to excel. So that's preparing people for ISO certification, taking them to the next level in terms of their ITAM function. And these are all underway in 2019. So the work on these are kicking off in July 2019. The PITAM course only came out in 2017, so it's only 2 years old. But we want to do a refresh already. One of the most common things we hear back from you is that other certifications in the industry are, might have been written in the 90s and haven't been touched since, and they've lost their relevance. So we want to make sure that even though PITAM's only a couple of years in the industry, it's constantly updated. Also looking at other skills and resources from the ITAM review. So Rich Gibbons is looking at public cloud governance, managing public cloud. AJ is looking at licensing, subscription licensing and SaaS, and expertise and resources around that. We're also looking at technical skills for people. This was unexpected to us, but when we started selling our Lisa platform, some of our customers there were saying, actually, we need some basic technical skills for our staff, because if you've come in from ITAM from maybe a non-technical background, might have been finance, might have been procurement, might have been business management, you might not necessarily know what the difference between a processor and a core is or something. So we're offering technical 101 courses to help people get up to speed there. We're also looking to provide people skills, so leadership, management, working with stakeholders, some of these softer skills that are very beneficial to our careers. We're looking to provide a primer on industry regulation. So let's say that you're a very accomplished asset manager, but you've moved into a new vertical, and that vertical has got some serious pressure from some industry regulation. We want to provide you a primer on that. You might not become an expert, you might not need to be an expert, but you can certainly pick up some information on that regulation so that you can, you're conversational in that regulation and understand the pressures. And finally, we want to look at auxiliary skills, so things like finance, legal, contract negotiations, contracts, other things that are maybe external or auxiliary to the ITAM function, but are very, very useful when it comes to your skill sets and working with other partners. Finally, we want to do more networking. As I've mentioned, we want to do a mentor program over the next few years. We want to facilitate more community knowledge and knowledge sharing. We want to help late entrants come in. I've showed you as throughout the path of this session that we don't have enough people coming in, so we want to facilitate that wherever possible. So the salary is already growing, but we want to attract new people in. So maybe late entrants, such as, let's say that you're mid-career and just been made redundant in another career. Let's pull those people in. Let's pull in ex-service people that have got great experience and skills that maybe could learn ITAM, and let's bring them in. Let's teach graduates that are doing IT degrees, let's teach them ITAM so that when they hit their IT careers later, they'll have a working awareness of ITAM. Let's get internships and apprenticeships going. As I look at the LinkedIn boards and the job boards, there's more apprenticeships than ever, especially for partners. Partners are cottoned onto this and are training up apprentices and graduates. We want to see more of that. And we want to increase diversity across the whole profession as well, and that's across everything we do. That's across the profession itself, but also our conferences and our content. So that's a broad brush about what we've got planned from the ITAM review, and that's a review of the salary survey for 2019. Thank you again to our friends at Livingston for sponsoring this research, and I hope you found that useful. Any questions, please contact me directly, or hit up our forum, or email support@itassetmanagement.net. So that's support@itassetmanagement.net. That goes to the whole team, and we'll pick up your question and come back to you as soon as we can. Thanks very much.